Troy has just fallen. The heroes are sailing home. The Odyssey is in cinemas right now, doing that voyage. 600 miles east, on the coast of what's now Syria, a king named Amurapi is dictating a letter while his harbor burns. This is the part the film doesn't show you, what they were sailing home into. He is fighting this with a letter. Every soldier he has is up north, serving the empire he answers to. Every ship he owns is off the coast of Turkey. His overlord asked for them. He sent them. He emptied his own city, and now he watches it burn. Then 6 words that end a kingdom. The country is abandoned to itself. Within a lifetime, every palace in that world was ash or empty. Besiegers and besieged alike. And the thing that killed them was not the ships. Historians have 4 serious answers for what did. They contradict each other, and everyone holding one is good at their job. So here's the thread we're going to pull. Ugarit went silent. Hattusa, the Hittite capital, was abandoned. Pylos went to ashes. Emar emptied. Mycenae and Tiryns burned. Some of them nobody had to burn at all. The people in those cities mostly walk away and go on living. Only 2 kingdoms come through, and both come out smaller. Back on the wall, the watchmen are counting. Amurapi puts the number in his letter. 7. You can count them. 7 ships took a kingdom with an army and a navy, because the army and the navy were away, honoring the deals that had made it rich. Everything it needed to survive was somewhere else. It fell because the world it belonged to had already spent it. The popular version says nobody answered him. They did. Cyprus had warned him first. He wrote back. And then Cyprus wrote again, asking where his ships were. The ships he had just told them were gone. 2 courts, both on fire, still filing paperwork at each other correctly. No help ever came. 50 years earlier, that same sea is the busiest, richest place on earth. Egypt, Babylon, Assyria, Cyprus, the Greek fortress kingdoms, and the Hittite Empire up in what is now Turkey, all writing to each other constantly. Gifts, brides, grain, metal. They address each other as my brother. You can hold the size of it in one object. A jar made in Greece at Mycenae turned up in a tomb on the hill at Ugarit. Not a copy, the actual pot, carried across that sea, buried with somebody, sitting in a museum in Paris today. And then there is the ship. A merchant hull went down off the southern coast of Turkey, carrying about 10 tons of copper and a little over 1 ton of tin. 10 to 1, lying there in the dark, in metal. That is one boat holding enough to arm an army. Here is the part everyone gets wrong about that wreck. That ship went down about 130 years before any of this. Nothing on it was running from anything. It is a photograph of the world while it was still working. 10 tons of copper, 1 ton of tin. Nobody aboard thought that was strange. And that ratio is the whole story. Bronze is not a metal you dig up. It is a recipe. About 9 parts copper, 1 part tin melted together. Copper is everywhere, and tin is almost nowhere. That is the entire Bronze Age in one sentence, and almost nobody is ever told it. Cyprus alone shipped copper in bulk, but there is no workable tin anywhere in Greece, anywhere in the Levant, anywhere in Egypt. Not a seam of it near any of the 3 that could not live without it. Every gram in every sword and plow and chariot fitting crossed mountains or an entire continent. So where was it actually coming from? The best analysis puts 2/3 of that ship's tin in the Taurus Mountains, in what is now Turkey. The other third came from Mushiston in Uzbekistan, over 2,000 miles east. Central Asian rock in a sword on a Greek beach. People have argued about where that metal came from for 200 years. And then somebody checked the tin in 3 wrecks off the coast of Israel. It came from Cornwall and Devon, matched on trace metals and on granite close to 300 million years old. The metal in a Greek sword may have come out of a British stream. So there were 3 roads running at the same time. It came from every direction at once, and none of it was local. Who was running a road like that? Nobody was. The tin coming out of Uzbekistan was dug by small local communities and free laborers, outside the control of kings, emperors, or any government at all. Nobody owned that road, which meant that when it stopped, nobody could start it again, and there was nothing else. These palaces were the trade itself. The Greek and Hittite systems were the machinery that counted and moved everything, and nothing else in that world was built to run a 2,000-mile metal road. So when a palace burns, the trade does not carry on without it. Then the rain stopped. Juniper trees cut near Gordion in central Turkey record 3 years back to back, 1198, 1197, 1196. 3 rings almost touching on a cut trunk. The scientists who found them were careful. Their paper says at the same time as, not because of. So what does 3 years without rain actually do to people? And here is the piece that decides it. Stored grain carries a population through 1 bad harvest. It does not carry 3. Stores go, then the seed corn, then the tax base. Soldiers walk away from the Hittite army in numbers. Whole villages start moving. All of that happens before there is a single enemy in the story, and the empire's own last paperwork proves it. The Hittite court writes to Ugarit demanding a ship and a crew to move 2,000 measures of grain, about 450 tons, and closes with 6 words: a matter of death or life. The superpower of Anatolia is writing about food. One of its officials writes to the same city personally: if there is any goodness in your heart, send even the remainders of the grain I asked for, and save me. Even the remainders. An empire's servant asking a vassal for leftovers. This is years before anybody sees a sale. While those lanes carried luxury, cutting one cost you money, and once they carried food, cutting one killed people. A raiding party that would have been a nuisance in 1250 is, in 1190, pointed at a lifeline. They never had to be strong enough to beat an empire, only to interrupt one already running on nothing. Up in the Anatolian highlands, the Hittite capital does something nobody expects. Hattusa was not stormed. It was packed. The royal family left, the officials left, the treasury went with them, and the scribes carried the tablets out. Temples stripped, palaces left to fall in. The fire came later, to a city that was already empty. The evidence is the thing that isn't there. Those buildings don't hold the piles of tablets a panicked flight leaves behind, which means somebody, in an office, worked out what to carry and gave the order in time. That is as far as the evidence goes. We will never know their name. No help ever came. The city they emptied stayed empty for 400 years. How completely can a world be erased? This completely. An empire that fought Egypt to a standstill, with its own language and its own law, was forgotten so completely that we had to dig it back up to find out it had existed. And the capital ended, though the Hittites carried on. Their kings kept the old title in a smaller city downriver, calling themselves Great King to nobody in particular. Across the water, the Greek fortress kingdoms go the same way. Tiryns burns. Mycenae burns around 1190. A citadel with walls so heavy nobody has worked out how they were stacked, burned anyway. And with each palace, the writing stops. Their script was a counting system for palaces, with no other job. Down the coast at Pylos, they had men posted to watch the sea. We have the lists. Units, stations, rosters. And there is nothing in them that says anyone was expecting anybody. The last thing that palace wrote down was a normal Tuesday. No help ever came. The tablets survive because the fire that killed the building baked them hard. Inland, on the Euphrates, a town called Imar stops in 1187. Look at what that town was still writing down. It is wills, marriages, adoptions, somebody buying a field. 800 tablets of ordinary people arranging a future, and then the series just stops. No help ever came. And here is the thing about the ships. Egypt fought them twice, 30 years apart. The first war names 5 peoples. The second, a generation later, names 5. only one name is on both walls. A group whose membership turns over across 30 years is not an invading nation. On Egypt's own victory wall, in among the fighting, there are carts. Ox carts, with women and children in them. Whoever these people were, they were moving house. They are not the disease. They are what the disease looked like from the wall. One collapse makes refugees. The refugees break the next state, and that state makes more of them. Egypt wrote their names down. Peleset, Cheker, Shekelesh, Denyen, Weshesh. We can match exactly one of them to a people we know. The rest are still just names. Every word and every picture we have came from the side that won. Even the name is ours. We invented sea peoples in 1855 for a group that may never have held a meeting. Egypt fought them off. It won on land and in the water of the delta, and carved the victory into the wall of a temple. 20 years later, in the empire that won, the men building the royal tombs walked off the job past the control post, shouting that they were hungry. A scribe named Amunakht wrote it down. They had already spent 18 days that month sitting behind a temple, waiting for grain that never came. The first strike in recorded history, and it was about food. You cannot stab a drought. And the pharaoh who beat the invaders was murdered at home by his own wife and her son. A scan of the body, 3,000 years later, found the throat cut through. Look at the map from above. Every palace on it silent. And the roads, 3 threads, from the Taurus, from Central Asia, from Britain, go out one after another. No army beat the Bronze Age. The one thing none of them could live without came through other people's hands and belonged to nobody. And when it stopped arriving, no one on that map knew how to fetch it. Greece stopped writing. The script went with the palaces, and it did not come back for about 400 years. When writing returned, it was borrowed from somebody else. 4 centuries in which nobody in Greece could read or write a word. No letters, no lists, no names, nothing kept. And who forgot them? The Greeks who came after looked at those walls at Mycenae, the blocks nobody could lift, and decided no human hand had stacked them. They credited giants. The Cyclopes. The people who forgot were their own descendants, standing in front of their own ancestors' city, reaching for monsters. And in the end, they stopped writing to each other. Not because the enemy came, but because there was nobody left anywhere to write to. That letter, written, sent, answered, from that room at Ugarit, in a building nobody ever came back to. Ugarit was never rebuilt. Not that year, not that century, not ever. The palaces went silent, and the writing stopped, and people kept living, and kept trading, and the alphabet that eventually reached us came out of that wreckage. A whole part of the field reads all of this as a change rather than an ending. 3,000 years on, they still cannot agree what to call it. That mound sat untouched until a farmer's plow hit a tomb roof in 1928, and the letter from that room came out from under it. Every system that has ever failed looked, right up to the last week, exactly like a system that was working. The captain who sailed home through this dying world, and what the poem says it cost him, that story is already up. See you next time.